Fala galera, beleza? Meu nome é Pedro, esse é o Learn Portuguese, and in today's video we'll talk about subject pronouns and regular verbs in Portuguese. And here we go. First of all, what are subject pronouns, or as we call them in Portuguese, pronomes pessoais do caso reto. They are actually words that can be used instead of nouns to take their place in order to avoid repetition. So, the first subject pronoun in Portuguese, singular, first person, eu. Eu. Now, for the second person, and this is where we have our first little problem, tu. Tu is actually used in very few places in Brazil, especially in the south of the country. And what does the rest of the country use? We don't use tu. Instead, we use você. But você is a particular case because we don't conjugate it like tu, but instead we conjugate it like the third person pronouns. And they are ele, ela. If you don't know yet, in Portuguese we don't have anything for it because all the nouns in Portuguese have to have genders. So we only have he and she, ele and ela. And I'll put você next to these ones because it's conjugated the same way. So let's review the pronouns in the singular. First person, eu. Second person, tu. Third person, ele, ela, você. Now let's take a look at the ones in the plural. Plural, first person, nós. In Brazil, we also say a gente. That means also we. So you can say nós or you can say a gente. But a gente is actually conjugated like the third person in the singular. So it's conjugated the same way as ele, ela, and você. Keep that in mind. I'll give you some examples later on. The second person in the plural is vós. However, it's not used anymore. It's archaic. It belongs to old Portuguese literature. But nowadays, nobody uses vós anymore. So, instead of vós, we use vocês, which behaves the same as você. It's a second person pronoun, but it's conjugated as a third person pronoun. So, for the third person, we have ele, ela, vocês. So, a quick summary of everything. Singular, eu, first person. Tu, and você, second person. Third person, ele, and ela. And in the plural, first person, nós, second person, vós, and vocês. The voice is not used anymore. And the third person, eles, elas. Now to illustrate what I mean, let's talk about verbs now. So, verbs is one of the most difficult things to learn in Portuguese because there are so many and there are so many exceptions. But for today, let's deal with only the regular ones. No exceptions for today. And if you don't know yet, there are three kinds of verbs in Portuguese. The ones finished in a, the ones finished in e, and I. So, three types of verbs. We call them primeira conjugação, first conjugation, segunda conjugação, second conjugation, e terceira conjugação, third conjugation. For now, let's deal with the verbs in the first conjugation, which means the verbs finished in a. Let's take, for example, the verb andar. That means to walk. So, andar is the infinitive, and how do we conjugate it? It's quite simple for regular verbs. We just have to remove the suffix a at the end, so we have and left, A-N-D. And for the first person, for eu, we just add the suffix o. So the verb is eu ando, I walk. For the second person, tu, we have to add the suffix as. Tu andas. For the third person, ele, ela, and você, we have to add a. So, ele anda, ela anda, você anda. He walks, she walks, you walk. And for the ones in the plural, first person, nós, we need to add the suffix amos. So the verb is nós andamos. We walk. To simplify everything, we're not going to be dealing with voz from now on. I just mentioned it so that you know that it exists, but we're not going to be talking about it anymore. And for the third person, we have to add the suffix Then, eles andam, elas andam, vocês andam. Then, you walk or they walk. And just a reminder, I took andar as an example, but for every regular verb finished in ar, we have to use the same suffixes. Now, let's take a look at the verbs in the second conjugation. And before we move on, I'd like to tell you that at the end of the video, we're going to have some exercises for you to do. So I'd like you to write the answers down in the comments below, and I'm going to say whether you're right, or I'm going to explain what was wrong. Now, for the verb in the second conjugation, let's take, for example, the verb correr, to run. The same. For this one, we have to remove the suffix e, and we have corr left. Cor. So let's conjugate it. For the first person, eu, it's the same. We have to add the suffix o. For all the regular verbs, all you have to do is add o. So the verb will be eu corro. I run. For the second person, tu. Instead of as, we're going to add es here as a suffix. Thus, the verb is tu corres. Tu corres. You run. The third person, ele, ela. Você corre. We have to add the suffix e at the end of the verb. Just some information. In Brazilian Portuguese, if the word finishes in e without any graphic marks, we pronounce it like an I. So we don't say corre, we say corre, as if it was an E. For the ones in the plural, for the first person, nós, we have to use hemos at the end of the verb. Then, nós corremos. We run. Nós corremos. For the third person, eles, elas, vocês, we have to add the suffix em. Eles correm, elas correm, vocês correm. So, they run or you run. And it's the same here. For every regular verb finished in er, we use the same suffixes. Now for the verbs in the third conjugation. Let's take here, for example, the verb dividir, which means to divide, to share. Dividir. Again, here we're going to remove the suffix e at the end, and we have divide left. So let's conjugate it. For the first person in the singular, eu, as I said before, we're going to use o. So the verb is eu divido. I share. Eu divido. Second person, tu divides. We're going to use the same es from the second conjugation here. We're going to borrow it. Then it's tu divides with es at the end. For the third person, we're going to say ele, ela, or você divide. We just add e at the end. Now, for the plural conjugations. For the first person, nós, here we're going to add imos at the end. So the verb is nós dividimos. So that means we share. And for the third person, eles, elas, vocês, we're going to borrow the conjugation from the second verb's er again, and we're going to use em. Eles, elas, vocês dividem. So the full conjugation of the verb would be eu divido, tu divides, ele, ela, você divide, nós dividimos, eles, elas, vocês dividem. Alright guys, now it's your turn. I'm going to leave some examples on the screen, and I took out the verbs on purpose because I would like you to complete with the verbs in brackets. I'm going to add the verbs in the infinitive form, and I would like you to conjugate the verb correctly according to the sentence. So the examples are: Alright galera, that was a video on subject pronouns and regular verbs in Portuguese. I hope it's clear enough. And if you're new to the channel, don't